Welcome to the Bowel Chronicles, where we dive deep into the world of bowel health. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and on this podcast we have raw and candid conversations with individuals facing various bowel conditions and illnesses. Through personal stories and shared experiences, we illuminate resilience and courage in the face of adversity. Be reminded that each story is personal and unique. These conversations are not to be taken as medical advice or to replace guidance from a doctor or healthcare provider. Our aim is to inspire and empower through these amazing stories, amplifying voices often unheard. So join us as we embark on this journey together. Sit back, listen, and be inspired. Enjoy the episode. Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Bowel Chronicles. I'm your host, Nikki Kilpatrick, and today we're joined by the lovely Jennie from Blackpool. Yeah.
Yes, best from that.
Jennie, it's so cool that you're giving up part of your evening to come on and share your story with us. I know we've been chatting for quite a while before we've hit record, and we could literally just chat and chat and chat for hours, but I'm really keen to get your story out there. So, Jennie, you have Crohn's disease, you also have a stoma, you have an ileostomy,
Yeah.
but your story is quite unique in that you didn't know you had Crohn's, but then you basically ended up with a stoma. So let's go back and do a recap and share with our audience and viewers today of what life was doing, what was happening for you, that you all of a sudden ended up with a stoma surgery.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much for having me. Thank you for inviting me on here. I appreciate it. My story kind of happened. I always say it started after I had my little boy, because that's when I started paying more attention to it. It was a lot earlier, but it was when I started really focusing on how I was feeling. In 2016, I had a little boy by C-section.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, I couldn't progress naturally, so they ended up doing an emergency C-section. And then after that, I ended up dealing with quite a lot of bowel issues every couple of weeks. Sometimes it would be okay, sometimes it wouldn't be. But it really came to a head in 2018. In 2018, I hadn't eaten for quite a while, for about 2 or 3 weeks, but I was going to the toilet quite a lot. I was also throwing up. Every time I went to the doctors, they said I had gastroenteritis. I went to the doctors 3 times. In the end, I found out I was also expecting again. So that's when I went back to the doctors and I said, look, I'm not eating, I'm not drinking. Is there anything I can do to make myself feel any better? Because I'm still in a lot of pain. I can hardly walk by this point. And he said, no, it's still gastroenteritis. You're just going to have to ride it out. So that night, I ended up sitting at home, riding it out like he wanted me to. But I also started bleeding at that point, bleeding from my bum every time I went to the toilet. So it panicked me. But because I had been told it's gastroenteritis, I felt a little bit silly going to the A&E, even though I probably thought I should go to A&E. I thought, now they're just going to turn me away again. I've got gastroenteritis. So
And
in the end,
was this the first time that you passed blood, or had there been previous times?
this this was the first time I'd passed as much blood. There was a lot of blood. It was like very runny blood. Whereas the previous times I'd passed blood, it was like I'd wiped. So I assumed that it was just because I'd been to the toilet and I'd just maybe wiped a little bit too hard or
Mhm.
something like that. It was never enough to make me question what was going on. Whereas this night there was a lot there, and I thought, oh, this is new.
Mhm.
But it's gastroenteritis. I've been going to the toilet quite a lot, so maybe it's just a bit of wear and tear, if you know what I mean, for a nicer way of saying it.
Yeah.
In the end, that night, I'd been up all night, and with the fact that I found out I was having a baby, or I found out I was very newly pregnant, I was probably only about 4 weeks, 5 weeks at that point, and I'd been experiencing the pain for quite a while. I hadn't eaten and drank. I decided to take myself to the walking centre with Rick, obviously my partner. My partner took me because I couldn't drive myself. I couldn't really walk. Um, so as soon as I went in there, they did a urine sample. They went through all my symptoms and things that I had, and immediately she sent me to the hospital. She said, "You're very severely dehydrated. You've not drank anything. You've not eaten anything. So I want you to go to the hospital to get checked out." As soon as I got into the hospital, they did blood tests. They again did more urine samples and stool samples, but then they kept me in. So I was like, "Oh my God, it's really scary now." Like thinking I only had gastroenteritis and
Mhm.
what's this? Why am I staying in hospital? They originally thought it was ulcerative colitis. After about a couple of days of staying there, it was a fight trying to get some tests done because every time I went down there, they said, "Are you pregnant?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." So they couldn't do it. They'd send me back up, but then the doctors had sent me back down. It was very to and fro in. But
Yeah.
eventually they did the scans and things and noticed that my bowel was very inflamed. So that's when they've come to the conclusion it was ulcerative colitis. Again, not confirmed, not a confirmed diagnosis, but they just presumed it was that. So I got put on a course of steroids, on infliximab as well while I was in there. I also had Asacol, those massive red tablets. None of that seemed to calm my bowel down. So I ended up going for an emergency ileostomy, emergency surgery on the 28th of March 2018. I woke up with a stoma and I didn't have a clue I was even getting a stoma. And I know you sign consent forms and stuff, but by this point I was very much out of it. I was on a lot of painkillers, I was on a lot of medication. Obviously, I signed it with the help of my partner. He kind of read it through and I just signed it thinking, yeah, if it makes me better, fine. I woke up with a stoma and I had no idea what one was. And I must admit at the beginning I didn't like it because I was a bit like, this is out of the ordinary for me. I don't know what this is. I've never experienced it. I didn't even know what ulcerative colitis was either. And then 2 days later, my consultant came to meet me and said that it's actually Crohn's. So they originally did my surgery with the hope of being reversed. So they've kept my rectum in there. They just took my bowel away. When they took my bowel away, it kind of fell apart anyway because it was that inflamed, which meant I ended up getting slight peritonitis. So I was on antibiotics for that, because obviously that could make me feel even worse. I could get infection. I could get sepsis. But luckily, they gave me some antibiotics and I was fine. So obviously, with it now being a diagnosis of Crohn's, I couldn't get it reversed. So I kind of had to come to terms with it. With it being an emergency, I was cut from the top of my stomach to the bottom. So it was not laparoscope. It was not a keyhole. It was very much an open surgery. And I had a stoma which I needed to care for. But me being me, I always do things over a bank holiday weekend, and it was Easter bank holiday weekend, so I didn't see a stoma nurse for a whole 4 days. So I didn't have a clue what to do with the stoma at all. Obviously, the nurses did help; they emptied it and things like that. But at this point, I didn't want to look at it myself because I was a bit too embarrassed. Um, so that was my Crohn's diagnosis. Unfortunately, I was pregnant, but I ended up losing the baby because of all the surgeries that I had. If you think about it, it probably wouldn't have been a viable one anyway because I wouldn't have been able to carry because of the scar that was on my tummy anyway. So it was in hospital for a month after that. Then I've come out of hospital, started to recover. Then I noticed I was getting ulcers on my stoma, but then I was also getting pain in my rectum and I was going to the toilet again. The urgency was coming back and the pain was coming back. But every time I did go to the toilet, because obviously my ileostomy now was where my waste was coming from, I was still going to the toilet with my rectum, but it was just blood that was coming out. So it was severely inflamed. So a year later, I had another surgery called a proctectomy surgery where they took my remaining rectum out and sewed up my bum hole. So I don't have a bum anymore. So now my ileostomy is very much permanent because there's no way that I can get it reversed ever again.
Mhm.
Then fast forward 6 months after that, I end up having to go on to Amgevita for my Crohn's because again, my ulcers have come back on my stoma. I get ulcers in my mouth. I get pain around my skin on my stoma. So that means my Crohn's is flaring. So I'm now on weekly medication for my Crohn's. Touch wood, it seems to be okay now, but at the time it was flared up. So that was in 2020, and I've not had touch wood any symptoms. I mean, obviously you still get pain, you still get the odd couple of days where you're feeling a bit ropey. I do get mouth ulcers a lot, but not a full-on flare, touch wood. My medication's keeping it under control.
Wow.
So
The hairs in my arms are standing whenever I hear you just rhyme it all off, so easily. This is what I went through, this major flare up. You didn't know it was Crohn's. You're told you're going to have an emergency um, ileostomy surgery. You sign the papers, totally out of it because you're so unwell. And waking up like convinced you don't have a stoma, even though you do.
yeah.
And in the midst of dealing with all of that, you have a miscarriage and
hmm
through infection and all of that, and spend a month in hospital, and then continue to have, more issues with Crohn's on the other side of surgery.
Yeah.
What a warrior! What a woman! Like honestly,
Thanks.
and you've since gone on to have another baby.
even though
Yeah,
you were told you may not conceive again. Um, yeah, which is
that was that was my main worry when I first started having conversations about having my proctectomy done. I know I needed to get it done. I was on medication every 2, 3 weeks, I think at that point. I would have an infusion, but it wasn't doing anything. I was still getting a lot of pain. I was on vedolizumab, but again, it was a gut medicine rather than a rectum medicine. I was still getting the same pain, I was still getting the same urgency, still going to the toilet a lot, and to the point where I had my infusion, but I also had my consultant appointment straight after. So we went to go and speak to him about how I was feeling, and he was like, "You've been feeling like this for now 6 months, so let's book you in." And he actually got his diary out in front of me, and he said, "Right, let's book you in." So I was like, "Right, okay, well, this has come out of the blue, but I do have a couple of questions. Like, I've heard that if I get this surgery done, it does affect your fertility and things like that." And he said at the time, it shouldn't really affect your fertility. But then everyone I spoke to after that was like, well, you've had a proctectomy, you've had surgery, so you are very unlikely to conceive. So that was something I've always wanted. I've always wanted a big family. And I have my stepson, Lewis, who is now 14, but at the time he was 5. And I had my little boy, Jack, who, when I had my surgery, he was only one. So it was, well, one and a bit. It was hard for them to come to terms with the fact that I was that poorly. But I'd always wanted to have other children. I'd been pregnant twice since Jack, but unfortunately experienced 2 miscarriages. So that was something that I'd always wanted. So when I had my proctectomy done, although we weren't actively trying, we weren't actively preventing either. And I just thought, well, if it happens, it happens. But I've been told it's very unlikely to happen. Hence why Jack is 8 and my new baby is 10 months old. There's such a big gap because I didn't think that there was ever any chance of me ever having another baby. And it was proven to me that I wasn't be able to have another baby because, again, we weren't actively preventing, but we weren't actively trying. And I just wasn't falling pregnant. So I just thought it's not going to be for me at this point. So I got a new job, got a new car. And then a couple of months later, I found out I was having a baby, which was a complete shock. It was a lovely shock, don't get me wrong, because she is a lovely little girl. But it was a very big, very, very big shock.
yeah.
But then that comes with the worries of how am I going to carry with a stoma, and I was very nervous about that. Luckily, there's been quite a few people that I've followed that have experienced pregnancy as well, so they came in really, really handy, following their journey as well. And I was also quite close to someone who's also having a baby at the same time as me, who has also got a stoma, so we connected quite well over having a baby and how we were feeling, and we get messaging each other every day, and it was just nice to go through it with somebody as well. Um, Luckily, I had no issues with my stoma. The only thing that I did experience was, we get scar tissue pain. As my belly was growing, my
Mhm.
scar tissue pain was really, really sore. It was like pulling and stretching, but touch wood, luckily, I had nothing else that was wrong. Um, so it was quite a smooth pregnancy, although it didn't seem like a smooth pregnancy in my head. In reality, it was quite smooth.
Yeah.
So.
How did your partner and your son adapt to you now having a stoma? What was that like?
So when I first had my stoma done, after I'd come round a little bit and I'd come to terms with it, like I said at the beginning, I didn't want it at all. I looked at it and
Mhm.
I hated it, and that's I don't like saying that because now I absolutely love it. But at the time, it was very hard to come to terms with because I've never experienced Crohn's, never experienced IBD, never experienced ulcerative colitis, and for me, this has just come out of the blue, and something's wrong, and now I'm left with a stoma, and I don't know why. So for me, it was very hard to come to terms with. So I actually gave my partner an out at that point. We'd just had a baby. My baby was only a year and a half. And I just said to him, look, if you want to leave, leave. You didn't sign up for this. Absolutely go. And he said to me at the time, you're being stupid, it's fine. So whenever I say that now, whenever I talk about it now, I'm like, I gave you an out. You're stuck with me now. You can't go anywhere. You've already said no, you're staying, so you're staying, so it's fine. But at the time, I did say you didn't sign up for this, so you can go and do what you need to do. And he was like, absolutely not. I'm staying with you. So he was really, really supportive. At the time, I wasn't sure because I didn't want to look at anything to do with the stoma. So they gave me loads of books on it. They gave me loads of leaflets, but in my head, I wasn't ready to come to terms with it yet. So I never looked at anything. Never looked at anything to prepare myself, or even afterwards. So he'd read all of the stuff about it. He was researching everything. He was researching what sort of stuff I could wear, what sort of underwear I could wear, what sort of clothes I could wear, but also what I could eat. So I ended up staying in hospital for a month. Went to hospital at the beginning of March, came out in the middle of April. And when I've come home, there's like a list of foods that I can eat on the fridge because he's wrote down what is a safe food to eat and what's not a safe food to eat. So whenever I was going to go and pick something out, he'd be like, "No, you can have that, and you can't have that." So he was very supportive in that way because I never looked at anything because I was too scared. For me, looking at stuff meant it was finally real, and I didn't want to admit it was real yet, even though I could see it and it was there. But you know what I mean? And mentally, I just wanted to deal with it when I want when I could. So he did all the research and stuff. So he'd adapted really well. With JJ, my little boy, he probably thought every woman had a stoma because I live in a house full of boys. They don't have one, and I do. So I think at the beginning he thought that every girl, every woman has a stoma, and it was no different for him. He would play with my bags. I wanted to try and be as open with him as possible because I don't want it to be something that he's ashamed of. At the time, I was ashamed of it, but as I got used to it, I was very open with him about it. I was also very open with my stepson as well. Me and my stepson had quite a close relationship. So I'd sit there and explain to him what had happened, obviously in a nice 5 or 6 year old way, without scaring him. But I was trying to make him realise that this is what's happened and this is how my life is. And he's never batted an eyelid. But that was my main worry, was how they were going to take it and how they were going to feel about it. But luckily, they've took it all in their stride. They're fine.
That's not the first time I've heard of a little boy think and assume if it's a mummy that has a stoma that all females have a stoma.
Yeah,
I was at something a few months ago, and someone was sharing this story with me, and she was excited on that day because she knew there was going to be another little boy there who had a stoma that
yeah,
her son was going to get to see. And see that moment of it was just like a light bulb moment of ping.
yeah,
Mum, you haven't been telling me lies. Like boys
yeah,
can have stomas, you know. I thought, oh, it's so wholesome. But I
yeah,
think in the way we explain it and the way we bring it across, obviously helps. I know there's things out there like Botany Bear and different things
yeah.
that really help young children. But
JJ's got a bunny bear, which he absolutely loved. Because
yeah,
he was quite a young baby at the time. It helped him because it obviously could then change the baby's bag, the bear's bag. You could
yeah.
take it off, put it back on, take it off, just like I do. So there's been times where he's just stuck a bag on him. He thinks that it's just the same. He just sticks it on and he just walks around with it. That when he was really, really young, he wouldn't do it now. He's 8, but then when he was young.
I've done that with my nieces and nephews for World Ostomy Day. I have
Mm.
3 bags here in my office that have all been diddled over and they've all been stuck to their tummies. Like we're like Auntie Nikki.
He does like drawing on a bag as well. If it's a birthday or a special occasion, he'll draw on a bag for me and he'll go, "You need to wear that one." He's taking it all in his stride. For him, it's no different. And I was lucky that before I left hospital, I became very comfortable with it. I thought there was a time where my consultant had come in and explained to me how actually poorly I was, and I didn't know because again, it was over my head. I thought I was fine, and I said to you before, I was due to go on holiday in the end of April, and I was still going in my head. I was going, and everyone was going, "No, you know," and I was like, "No, honestly, I am." I didn't really know how ill I actually was. Again, I've always thought that my issues were down to anxiety. So again, I'd never had any history of Crohn's or colitis, didn't know anything about it. The first I've heard about it was being in hospital. So I was totally unaware. Whereas then my consultants come in and sat me down and actually explained to me how poorly I was after my surgery. And I thought, oh my God, so if it wasn't for this stoma, then I wouldn't have been here. And God help me not being here when I've just had a baby and I can't live to see him grow up and I can't see the boys grow up together and I can't be with Rick. And it was just a bit of a light bulb moment to me to go, actually, it's actually saved my life. So it's all right. So
These
it turned
things
into a
you
little
have
accessory for me then.
a better relationship with your stoma these days.
Definitely. It was just shortly after I came out of hospital I realised actually it is a bit of a lifesaver and it's a little bit of an accessory, and there is ways you can dress it up. You can put a cover on it, you can have the different bags. That's why I like the salts bags because they're different colours. So it was just became more of an accessory rather than a medical device for me, if you know what I mean. So
It's this adaptation we have to our body that helps us function a lot better than what we did beforehand. So
yeah.
was there or is there a history of Crohn's or IBD in your family? Or
So there's a funny story actually. There's no history of IBD as what I'm aware. But when I was in hospital again, I was very out of it in hospital. My mum and dad were coming to see me. My mum and dad are separated, but they were both coming to see me and looking after me while I was there. I was having conversations, but because I was that poorly, I think I liken it to being hungover. If you move your head too fast and you want to be sick, that's how I felt at the time. So I'd have conversations, but I'd have my eyes closed, so I wasn't all quite there while I was in hospital. And it was just after I'd come home from hospital. Rick's a fireman, so he works nights. He'd gone back to work because I was well enough, and he was back at work. He was doing nights, so my mum had offered to stay with me. And we were in bed one night, and she was going, "Oh yeah, your nana had a stoma." And I went, "What?" I went, "Yeah, your nana had a stoma. Has your dad not told you?" Because it was my dad's mum. And I was like, "No, he's not mentioned it at all. Do you not think that he should have mentioned it right now? Because I've got no idea that this has actually happened." Went back to my dad and I said, "Why did you not tell me that your mum had a stoma?" He went, "I did. I told you while you were in hospital." But because I was so out of it, I had no idea. I'd had this conversation. He thought it's all gone in. It's not for me. I had no idea. And I was equally shocked when my mum told me, "Yeah, you never had a stoma." So there was no they couldn't remember why she had a stoma, but she had a stoma. Um, but again, it could have been bowel cancer, it could have been IBD. There was no definitive answer for that, but she had a stoma, whereas not directly. It's like obviously a missed generation thing, but she had a stoma. And no one else that I'm aware of in my family has got anything to do with IBD
yeah,
or
this is
anything.
quite similar. We were saying before we hit record there. Similar scenario to myself, where my nan had a stoma, she had bowel resections, and I think the older generation just weren't as open and sharing
No.
things. Weren't on very very private
Yeah.
generation, so we miss out on these things. And I kind of wish, like, I was 19, 20 when my nan had hers. I was like, oh, I wish I could go back in time,
Oh yeah, yeah.
ask her so many questions. Like, I'm sure it helped her and it benefited her in so many ways because of what surgery she'd been through and how she was living life, even though she was very unwell and very poorly with it. And it was later in her life, and sadly, she ended up passing away from other things. But I could have viewed that as being an absolutely horrendous thing, which I did, and I seen it as the
Mm.
demise of her and the finish of her. Um, but that could have really impacted me whenever it came to I knew I needed bowel surgery.
Yeah.
And I was asking for the bowel surgery because I had no quality of life. And I could have had an attitude of there's no way you're coming near me. But what would have life been like for me if I had had to just kept going on?
Mm.
So it's all down to kind of how we perceive it and how we want to let it pan out. I think for ourselves, accepting of it that it is life saving,
Yeah.
and living, um, definitely helps us. Oh, what an incredible journey you've had, Kurt. It's absolutely amazing, and I love that you've got supportive partner. That's really
Hmm.
put out there. Who has your back,
Yeah.
and obviously Crohn's impacts a lot differently to ulcerative colitis, and that it impacts the whole, basically from your mouth to your bottom.
Yeah.
So although you've had a couple of surgeries, you say you have no bum. I like to think of you with a lovely Barbie bum. Um, um, you still have these things going on. So, like, I want to say, I'm touching wood for you that these flare-ups are
Mm.
minimal, that the treatment works that you're on, and that you do
Yeah.
get, you
Luckily, it is working so far. So far, so good. I just dread. I dread trying to find a different one. So I've been through quite a few. since I've had my surgery. Because I had inflicted bowels in hospital, but they also tried me infliximab again once I'd had my stoma. But I'd already built up antibodies to it, so I'm now allergic to it. So if they tried to give it me again, I'd come out in hives and things like that. So that is one that I need to not use anymore. So that is one major worry of mine, that if this doesn't work now, what else? What's next? And I don't like to think about that too much. But it's just because that's what when they first originally said I was getting a stoma or I was having surgery, I thought this is going to make me better. And then 6 months down the line, I was still getting symptoms, and that didn't make me any better. So I had another surgery, and then that was supposed to make me better, and that didn't make me any better because I still had the symptoms. Because Crohn's can just affect anywhere; it can affect your daily life all the time, even though you're not flaring. If, say, for instance, I feel a bit run down or a bit fed up, and my mouth starts coming out with ulcers, and you can tell that's from my Crohn's. It's not a full-on flare, but it's just how it affects you in your normal everyday life, if you know what I mean. So it can find it very difficult to eat and drink and things like that. So I have to really try and look after myself now, which is very difficult.
As well as look after a young family.
Yeah, yeah. Then I'm back at work now as well after maternity, so that's been very difficult. Going back to work full time, having a baby. Just you need to try and make time for yourself as well, because one of my favourite sayings is you'll always need to make time for yourself, otherwise your body will make you. Like your body will tell you when enough is enough, which is what it did. So
Yeah, I know
always an advocate to look after yourself.
it's too late, isn't it? You're too far gone by that stage. Yeah. And to be the best version of you, you've got to look after you, because if you're no good, well, you're not a good wife and you're not a good mum, and
Mm.
you're no use to anybody. So you really have to make that time for you. And then stress and worry and all of that, juggling all of that obviously makes symptoms worse. So you really need to look after yourself. One thing I want to ask you quickly is you'd
Yeah.
had quite a few calprotectin tests done,
Yes.
gastroenteritis, and they'd done bowel samples, stool samples, and nothing ever showed in your stool samples.
No.
Do you think there should be a new form of stool sampling done, or they
I
need to
I
do more
feel
tests?
Yeah, I ended up making a complaint about the doctors because I was very, very mad. It didn't go any further than a complaint because they didn't think it should have gone any further than a complaint, which still frustrates me to this day. But I was just, it's very frustrating the way that they kind of just fobbed me off, and I didn't like it at all. The first day I went in, he said it's just gastroenteritis, and then the second day, that's when he made me do a stool sample. So I did a stool sample, sent it off. And then the next time I went in, I said, "Have you not got any results for that yet?" And he said, "Your results are fine." And I said, "Well, is there any other tests that you can do?" So he ended up giving me another test. I don't know whether it was different. It was testing for different things. I don't know. I don't know how to read blood forms or stool sample forms. I don't know. But he seemed to think it was something different he was checking. So I was like, right, okay. So I've done that one, sent it off. The thing that makes me laugh all the time is I'd gone in on I think it was the Wednesday, done this stool sample, or Thursday. That's the Friday when I started bleeding, the Saturday when I went to the walk-in centre. The Thursday after, he rang me and said, "You're going to have to come back to the doctors, there's something wrong." And I said, "Well, that's funny, because I'm already at the hospital, because I've told you something's been wrong for a while." And he was like, "Oh, really?" And I said, "Yeah, I've been in the hospital since Saturday, but thanks very much." And then I hung up because I just thought, you should have really picked this up ages ago. And he ended up, when I received the response, it's kind of their policy. What he did was right within their policy, which is fine. He's done what he needed to do as a doctor. But also, if you can see that I'm in that much pain, and if you can see that I'm not, I'm still in that much pain, but nothing's showing up, surely there's another way, rather than just going, "There's nothing wrong." And that's what's frustrating with people with bowel, because I hear this all the time. Whenever I speak to people, it's like, "Well, they've said nothing's wrong, so they can't proceed any further." And I'm like, but that shouldn't be how it is. Because then if not that I probably wouldn't have been in any other situation, but I always think, if he'd have sent me to the hospital the first time I'd seen him, would I be in a totally different situation now? Would I have a stoma, or would I be managing it with some sort of medication? Not that not that having a stoma is a bad thing at all. It's not. It's really saved my life. It's been great. But could I have tried something different that would have maybe calmed my bowel down a little bit more? Had it already gone too far at that point, I'll never know. But it's always something that I think about in my head, and it's only because he's gone, nah, everything's come back fine. So, which is great, but I need something else from you. Which is why when I do have issues now, I went after I had my stoma done, and I was experiencing pain in my rectum and I was experiencing pain in my tummy, and they sent me to a rapid access clinic, which is basically you go into the hospital, you get your bloods done, you wait 2 hours, and you get your results. And if they need to admit you, they'll admit you. If they can't, they'll just send you home. So he looked at my bloods and he went, your bloods are absolutely fine. And I said, right, okay, so what's this pain? He went, oh, I don't know. And I said, well, I've got Crohn's and I've got a stoma, so is it something related to that? He went, you don't have Crohn's. I went, yes, I do. I've got Crohn's. I've just been in hospital for a month and I've got a stoma. So if I don't have Crohn's, what do you call this? Like, you can see that I've got a stoma. So I don't understand what you're talking about. He was like, no, it says here you might have Crohn's. I went, no, 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 no. I've been told I've got Crohn's. So now you're making me second guess everything that's just happened, which I've just got over, and now you're bringing it all back on the air saying I might not have Crohn's. I'm just a bit confused. In the end, I fought with him that much that he said, right, okay, I'll book you in for a scope. I went, right, okay, that's fine. That's all I wanted, because then at least you can have a look inside and see if something's going on. When they've done that scope, they've realised that I am in fact flaring. They can see ulcers still in my stoma. And I said, well, there you go. I knew there was something wrong, so please don't try and fob me off and say there's nothing wrong. So I've come to that position now where I'm advocating for myself a lot more by going, I'm not leaving here until you tell me something different than what you're telling me, because I know there's something not quite right. And if I have to keep coming back to you, I will do. I remember through COVID once when I was really experiencing some issues, someone emailed me and actually copied in my consultant. And I was like, oh, they're going to regret doing that. Because I was like, I can't catch you on the phone, but I'll email you instead. And every time there was a problem, I was like, right, I need to speak to you. I need to speak to you. I've got your email address now, so I really need to talk to you. And to be fair, it really worked because I was just on his mind all the time, obviously. So that at that point, that's when he's ended up doing a scope himself, and he's gone, yeah, you are right. There is something quite wrong. Because I hear a lot all the time, blood and calprotectin tests always come back clear, but there is something wrong. Because why else would someone be in pain? So that I do feel like there needs to be some work done around that, but I wouldn't know where to start. I'm not clinical or gastro or anything, but that's something that I kind of advocate for. If anyone comes to me with any issues, I'm like, you need to go back to them. And if you don't go back to them, I'll come back with you. We'll go together.
Yeah. And no matter who I interview, no matter who I talk to in the bowel community, we all say exactly the same thing. Sadly, we have to advocate for ourselves. We
Yeah,
have to push, push, push. And these are not like simple cases. It's not like, oh, you've got a case of gastroenteritis, it's gonna go away in a week or so. And
yeah,
that's not what we're dealing with here. We're dealing with really severe cases and conditions. We don't want to be in hospital. We don't take ourselves to hospital unless it's like the last thing we have to do. Because why would we want to sit in a hospital when all we can do is sit on the toilet or not sit
well,
on the
yeah,
toilet and you're in excruciating pain? You feel like you have no dignity at all. It's the last place you want to be. Why would we put ourselves through that? And
exactly.
like 99.9% of us have a really high pain threshold because
Mm,
like the pain we have suffered. And it's like
yeah,
we won't be there unless we need something, and
I, I always say to Rick, I'm like, if I'm telling you it hurts, it's because it's hurt for about 2 weeks.
yes.
It's now I've dealt with it for this long on my own, and I'm quiet. But if I'm telling you, I'm now in a lot of pain. So please help me.
I know. I've actually been sitting on the toilet, and as recent as November with the bout of pneumonia, but I was dehydrated and everything else was going on. And I had a bit of PTSD when I was sitting on the toilet, couldn't move.
Oh,
And it's like, my hubby's trying to hold me up, and you're like, am I staying conscious? Can I stay conscious? No, I'm gone. I'm back in the room. I'm gone. I'm back in the room. Oh, maybe we need to go to the hospital now. It's like, I think so, But you wait to the last minute before you do that.
oh yeah, yeah, you do. And it's like your story when we were talking about at the beginning. If you hadn't advocated for yourself as strongly as you did, you wouldn't be in the position you're in either. You advocated for yourself very, very well.
But it's you've been gaslit so many times, you've been
Oh
proven
yeah,
wrong so many times, you've been diagnosed with IBS, this, that, and the other. Like, I cannot take anymore. Like, how low do I have to stoop? And I'll never forget my surgeon actually after post surgery. And he said, the last time I seen you, there was just something different about you. What do you mean?
mm,
I said, you were rock bottom. I was like,
mm,
I've been rock bottom for a long time. I didn't think I was any different the last time he seen me to the last 4 or 5 times he'd seen me. But he just said
yeah,
something had changed. And something had changed because I said to you, I sat at Christmas dinner with my shake and I said to my family, this is the last time I ever do this. This year is the
yeah.
last year. Something has to change. Life can't remain like this. So yeah, if someone is listening today and you're listening to Jennie's story and bits and bobs that I've shared there, you need to advocate for yourself. You need to push for yourself. You might feel like you can't take any more, that there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but I can tell you, whenever you push and you advocate for yourself, there is light at the end of the tunnel. And surgery isn't the worst thing in the world. Jennie may still suffer with Crohn's there, but she has a better quality of life now, and she's here for her children, for her family, and that's because she's gone through this surgery and she has pushed and advocated for herself to get that help. So, Jennie, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your amazing story with us today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. If there was a little golden nugget, one more little nugget of truth that you could share with a younger Jennie today, someone listening, someone in a similar story to yourself, what would it be?
I would always say to myself now, just believe in yourself because whenever I have an issue or now, or I'm in pain or I'm worried about something, I always think back to myself on that Friday night where I was like, do I go to the hospital or do I not? Because the doctor said I don't need to, but I feel like there's something wrong. No, it's fine. I'll just be stupid. If I go back to myself at that point, I'd be like, go to the doctors. Believe in yourself. You are right. You know your own body, and that is what I would say to anybody else. Yeah, you know your own body best. If you think there's something wrong, you do whatever you want to try and right that. You go to the doctors, go to the hospital, you fight for yourself. And I wish I'd have done that then. Wish I'd have gone back to that point.
I'm here to tell us. Amazing, absolutely amazing. Jennie, again, thank you so much for giving up your time. Jennie's social media handle will be tagged below here. She is the Off Mummy on Instagram, but her social media handle will be tagged below in the show notes. So go give her a like, give her a follow. And guys, if you've got any questions that haven't been covered today, I'm sure you can pop Jennie a message, or you can pop myself a message, and we will try and get you an answer. We are not professionals, we're just sharing our own stories with you today. And as always, we are on social media sharing our journeys just to give advice and support like we have gained as well from the amazing bowel community. So guys, that's us for today. Do come back next week to join us for another episode. And again, Jennie, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.